Are you sure the Christmas story you grew up with is really just one story? I'm asking honestly, because if you place the two biblical accounts side by side, something strange appears. It isn't a single film at all, but two very different films cut and stitched together. And when you look closely, some details are not just contradictory, they are things that could never have happened in real history. I understand why this story is so deeply loved. I felt that warmth too, that sense of comfort, like a childhood memory tied to family, soft lights, and quiet winter nights. So today, I'm not here to argue against anyone's faith. I'm not asking you to let go of what you cherish. I only want to do something very human and very fair, to read the text again like a detective, slowly and honestly, without bias, and to ask one simple but important question. What is the New Testament actually telling us? Here is the first fact that surprises many people. The New Testament contains 27 books, yet only 2 of them describe the birth of Jesus, Matthew and Luke. Mark, the earliest gospel, begins with Jesus already as an adult. John does the same, rich in poetry and theology, but with no manger, no shepherds, no wise men. Paul, who wrote even earlier than all the Gospels, never mentions these familiar details either. So if the birth story were truly the historical core, why were most of the authors completely silent? So from here on, we need to agree on one clear rule. Today, we are not going to blend these two stories together to make them sound smoother or more comforting. We are not merging Matthew and Luke into one familiar, warm picture. We will let each author speak in his own voice, and we will investigate this story in 3 simple and fair steps. Step 1 is the census, the device used to move the family to Bethlehem. Step 2 is the timeline after the birth, where they went and why. Step 3 is the symbolic elements, the star, the prophecies, and the genealogies. No emotion, no defense, just reading, comparing, and observing. And now we begin with step 1, the census. Now we arrive at the first major turning point, the census. According to Luke, Joseph and Mary lived in Nazareth, but there was a problem. The Messiah was supposed to be born in Bethlehem. So Luke needed a reason to move them from Nazareth to Bethlehem, and he introduced a plot that sounds very convincing. A massive census ordered across the empire, forcing everyone to return to their ancestral town to register. At first glance, it feels historical, very Roman. But when you look closer, the story begins to break in 2 ways. The first problem is timing. Matthew says Jesus was born while King Herod was still alive, and Herod died in 4 BCE. Luke, however, connects the birth to the census under Quirinius, who did not govern until around 6 CE. That is nearly a 10-year gap, long enough for a newborn child to be walking into 1st grade. Both dates cannot be true. The second problem is even more down to earth. Luke claims Joseph had to return to Bethlehem because his ancestor King David lived there 1,000 years earlier. Imagine living and working in a modern city, then being told by the government to travel back to the hometown of an ancestor from 1,000 years ago just to sign a tax form. No efficient empire would ever do that, especially not Rome, which only cared where you lived and what could be taxed. This census was a narrative solution to a theological problem, not a historical event. And remember, this is only step 1. Now we come to the second major turning point, and this is where the story truly cannot be stitched together. Listen carefully, as if you were placing 2 recordings side by side. In Matthew, everything unfolds under tension and danger. Wise men arrive searching for a newborn king. Herod panics and orders a violent response. The family is forced to flee to Egypt, leaving their home behind in fear. They remain there for a significant period, possibly months or even years, until Herod dies. Only then do they return, and only then do they finally settle in Nazareth. It is a story of escape, survival, and a child whose life is threatened from the very beginning.
Luke, however, tells a completely different story. There are no wise men, there is no enraged Herod, there is no Egypt. 8 days after the birth, the child is circumcised. About 40 days later, the family calmly brings him to the temple in Jerusalem, the very center of religious authority, where they perform the required rituals like any ordinary family. Then, Luke is explicit. After completing everything according to the law, they return peacefully to Nazareth. Pause for a moment and feel the contrast. One story is about running for your life from a king who kills children. The other is about openly traveling, worshiping, and returning home without fear. You cannot be hiding from a deadly pursuit and calmly visiting the capital at the same time. This is not a minor detail. It is an entirely different journey from beginning to end. Now we come to the heaviest moment in the story, the part many people would rather not think about. In Matthew, there is a dark scene, the killing of children in Bethlehem. Even hearing it shifts the mood, and the familiar warmth of Christmas disappears. What matters here is that this scene appears only in Matthew. It is not found in Luke, and it is not found anywhere else. So why does Matthew include something so disturbing? The answer lies in how he shapes Jesus as a new Moses. In the Hebrew scriptures, Pharaoh orders the killing of Hebrew boys, and Moses must be hidden to survive. In Matthew, Herod orders the killing of boys, and Jesus must flee to Egypt. The two stories are deliberately placed side by side. The goal is not to deliver a cold historical report, but to send a theological message to Jewish readers that this child stands in the line of Moses. Seen this way, the massacre no longer feels like recorded history, but like a familiar narrative structure used to elevate meaning. It functions more as symbolism than as evidence.
Now, let's move quickly through the most familiar details, the ones that feel iconic, but are also the most symbolic. First, the star. In Matthew, the star does more than appear in the sky. It guides the wise men, then stops over a specific location. That is not how astronomy works. It is the symbolic language of the ancient world, where the heavens were used to announce the birth of someone important. Next come the prophecies. Many of these arguments depend entirely on how a text is read, how it is translated, and how different passages are linked together. Change the translation or the context, and the meaning shifts. Finally, the genealogies. Matthew and Luke give two different family lines, following two different branches, yet both trace them through Joseph. This becomes strange when both stories also insist that Joseph is not the biological father. When you put it all together, it does not feel like reading a precise birth record. It feels more like watching authors build a message, selecting the details that best support the story they want you to believe. So after all of this, what is actually real? First of all, no one needs to hate Christmas. Traditions still have their place. The music, the lights, the feeling of family and togetherness, all of that can still be beautiful. What matters is knowing how to separate things. Tradition is tradition, theology is theology, and history is history. When you strip away the symbolic layers, the most minimal picture may look like this. Jesus was a Jewish man born into poverty in a region under Roman rule. He grew up, gathered followers, spoke about justice and hope, and was eventually executed by Roman authorities. That is the part history can reach. The myths that surround it exist not because people are foolish, but because people need light, especially in the darkest moments of their lives. And here is the most important thought to end on. A story that is beautiful, comforting, and repeated long enough eventually starts to feel like truth in the human mind. If you are genuinely curious, don't take my word for it. Check it yourself. Tonight, open Matthew chapter 2 and Luke chapter 2. Place them side by side, read slowly, and write down the differences you notice. Then tell me which one shocked you the most. One
the 10-year gap between Herod and the census. 2. The flight to Egypt versus the peaceful return to Nazareth. 3. The star that works like a navigation device. Comment 1, 2, or 3 and explain why you chose it. Keep your curiosity alive. Breaking illusions is not about breaking you, it is about seeing more clearly. Stay curious, stay honest.